Koine Greek, and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at John chapter 5, verses 26 through 29, so it is going to be a long one today. But first, last time in John chapter 5, and here is our rubric. Let's go ahead and get started. Hos per gar, ho pater eke zoen in heautoi, hutos kai toi huioi edoken zoen eken en heautoi, kai exousion edoken autoi krisin poiein, hoti huios anthropu estin. Me thou madzete tuto, hoti erketai hora en hei pantes hoi en tois ne meois acusousin, tes phones autu, kai ek poreu sontai, hoi ta agatha poie santes eis anastasin zoes. Hoi de ta faula praxantes eis anastasin chryseos. That's a lot. Hosper just means for just as, the for comes from gar. Ho pater, this is our nominative singular subject, masculine. Eke is our verb, which we saw just in the last page, I believe. Zoen with that eta nu is an accusative, singular, feminine as the object, and en prepositional phrase with he autoi. Hutos can't be part of it, so the prepositional phrase closes here. The sub iota tells us that en is taking the dative case, and this pronoun is singular and masculine, since it is referring back to the father. And we should also note that it is with this aspirated epsilon, a reflexive, so it can't possibly refer to anything else. So it means in himself. Moving on to the next clause, hutos adverb here, kai, toi, huioi, both of those subiotas tell us these are both dative singulars, and the omega tells us masculine. Edoken is our verb, epsilon nu, the third person singular. We've got the prefixed, the augmenting vowel at the beginning telling us this is a past tense. This is didomi, doso, edoka. It is the aorist tense, even though it has the kappa, which I think I've mentioned this before. Even though this verb has the kappa here, it's not perfect tense. It would need another delta right here. So then we've got the third singular aorist active indicative verb, meaning he gave, and then the direct object zoen, don't need to parse that again. Ekain epsilon iota nu, this is a present active infinitive. So he gave to the son what? To infinitive, a direct object, so I suppose zoen is actually the object of ekain, and edoken, well, you could really read it either way. He gave life to the son to do this, or he gave to the son to have life. In heautoi, same as this prepositional phrase above. No need to parse that. I'm going to write all this down and be right back. Moving on into verse 27, kai conjunction connecting these two thoughts together. We've got alpha nu there for a direct object, accusative, singular, feminine because of the alpha, and here we see the verb, same as the one before, no need to parse. Autoi, another indirect object with that sub iota. We should assume the same subject since there's been no pronoun indicating a change, and then therefore we should also assume the same indirect object, that being the son. As again, there's been no change, no other dative to refer to. Krisin here, we've got iota nu. This is krisis, chryseos, krisi maybe for the dative, and then it would be krisin for accusative. Yes, singular, and this is feminine, according to my notes anyway. And then we've got another present active infinitive. Note that we've got the circumflex here, which means that there is a contraction. This is poieo, it's an epsilon contract verb, so epsilon plus epsilon iota nu. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the bare bones, the explanation of how it is formed that way. So present active infinitive, acting upon krisin as its object. Authority would then be taking poiein, so authority to infinitive, a direct object. And then the explanation for why this is all possible, we have hoti, because, huios, omicron sigma, nominative that we've seen before, anthropu, omicron upsilon, genitive singular masculine, and then estin from a me, third person singular present tense. We don't need to parse that because he is Son of Man. The title from Daniel and I don't remember where else, but all throughout John, Jesus will use this to refer to himself in addition to. Actually, I don't remember how many times Jesus says he's the Son of God with specific huios theou. It possibly happened earlier, if theou wasn't referring to him. But yeah, I already talked about that. Anyway, see you momentarily. Moving on into verse 28, me thaumadzete, we have epsilon tau epsilon, which is the second person plural. Since we got a me in there, this means that we should read this as an imperative rather than just a simple indicative. So second plural, present tense, still got the zeta right there. Active imperative. And then tuto, that is tuto, third form of hutos, the neuter form, standing in for ideas, generic things. This idea right here is what he means. Accusative as the direct object, singular. And as I said, neuter. I am rambling on. Apologies. Hoti, because, again, erketai, I've seen that before, present active, third person singular, with hora here, nominative, singular, feminine. I'm using the word here too much. There's always something. Our, N prepositional phrase, aspirated eta with a sub iota and circumflex tells us that this is the relative pronoun hos. Hey. I don't remember where the accident is on that one then. Ho. Feminine, in which hey has to refer back to our. Pantes, wrong form to be part of the prepositional phrase, so it ends here with dative, singular, feminine. Pantes, epsilon sigma on this adjective tells us nominative plural or accusative plural. Since we've got the plural nominative article right after it, nominatives make sense for this. But to what is hoi referring? Well, it can't be this prepositional phrase, which we can see from the omicron iota sigma plural endings. Aren't it also? In taking the dative, plural, and then mnemeos, this is a neuter noun. And here we have akususin, so that closes that prepositional phrase, hoi referring to the ones who are hearing. And here I am questioning myself. If this were a typical present tense participle, it would be on, ontos, onti, onta, ontes. But sometimes it's off. I don't think it's one of these times because we saw akususin, I think on the last page in verse 25, and that I treated it as an indicative. So probably right then, probably right again to say that this is an indicative and not a participle. Still, it's kind of weird for me, as many things are weird for me, to see an article with a verb. So that's standing in as a pronoun, as happens. So akususin, you got the sigma right there, no augmenting vowel at the beginning, therefore it's future tense. Usi is the third person plural. And then tes, phones, eta sigmas there are genitive, singular, feminine. This verb takes a genitive of the thing heard, as again I think I spoke in the last page, then autu, omicron upsilon, another genitive, singular, this time masculine, referring to now the Son of Man, since that was the last male subject in the singular. Let's go all the way back here. And he's possessing the voice like he did in the previous page. Forgot to note what the meaning of nemeos is. It's grave. It's nemeon in the singular. I don't know of any derivatives we get from this, but the Latin word I think that the Latin corresponding in the Vulgate, I think we do get maybe mausoleum, maybe something else from it, but that's for next week. Moving on into verse 29, kai ek poreusantai. Here we have our personal ending, and another use of here. Ek is prepositional prefix, so there's no augmentation there. Then that tells us that the sigma addition to the stem makes this verb the future. But with the ontai ending, we now have the middle passive endings. This is poreuo is the classical form, but poreuomai, I believe that is the Koine form, so it's deponent. Unless ek poreuo has a special meaning in the middle, and I'm not sure. My notes only say this word means depart. Good for me. So I'm going to write down middle slash deponent, since I'm not sure, and if I recall, there will be a note in the video. And then we get to the subject of this verb with hoi, another article, but this one pointing forward past ta agatha to poiesantes. Here we get the new tau, epsilon, sigma, nominative, plural. We have a change in the stem of this verb with the eta and the sigma. There's no augmenting vowel, which makes sense because this is a participle in form and augmenting vowels only occur in the indicative. So nominative, plural, masculine because of the article, aorist tense because of the stem, active participle, and then this needs an object to act upon, which we find sandwiched between it and its own article, which is a very common way of doing things. Ta agatha. This is again going to be a neuter generic, like tuto was referring to this idea, but in this case it's just general, the good things, doing the good things. So accusative, plural, neuter, unspecified, though if you look back to the moral teaching of the Old Testament and the moral teaching of Jesus himself, it should be pretty obvious what ta agatha is. Ace prepositional phrase plus accusative anastasin. This is an cis-sin or cis-seos noun. I'm still not positive that I'm remembering the genitive correctly. They don't pop up as often as they ought, honestly. So ace anastasin. Zois is the wrong form, so we must close here. Plus accusative singular feminine. Yes, feminine. And then zois. Seen this just above, somewhere just above. No, we didn't see this one. It's that one I'm thinking of, but it's pretty obvious what that is. Owning the anastasis, the resurrection. And then I think I'm going to do this final clause, write it all down, and then we'll take a look at it in its own context. Hoi, new subject, contrasting with the hoi up here. De, also telling us that there should be a contrast. But, the, tafaula, object again between the article and its participle, same form here. This xi should be a very obvious marker to that this participle is the same form exactly as poiesantes. Just drag that down, again fitting wonderfully with our the contrast that Jesus is setting up. This verb to distinguish from this one is prato. Taus become sigmas, sigmas become taus, depending on which era you're reading in. So you have thalata is the word for sea, classically, and then the T's become softened into S's in Koine, or maybe I'm getting it backwards. It's only been, what, last chapter since we saw C? I don't remember now. But anyway, that's what we've got going on. So poiesantes, this is the same verb that the Septuagint uses in Genesis chapter 1. I know this because I just checked it, and that's why I put create there. But proxantes, this is to do, to act, to fare, to practice. It is a different action verb, and you'd have to go to somebody who's actually done a proper study of it to distinguish the real implications behind how they are different. I think, though, that it is very significant that Jesus is, where did it go? poiein up here is the same word as the Alexandrian scholars used to translate barach from the Hebrew, and that's the word that is used of the righteous, the ones doing good, versus this different though related word in at least action for those who do tafaula, which is another accusative, plural, neuter, generic, just the generic not good things. So the way that I'm going to translate this one versus poiesontes is this is going to be practice, and this one is going to be do. Or you could say create, though that's already pretty awkward up here where I've placed it in the English. That's not what you would typically do. So practice versus do. Ace, prepositional phrase. It's going to be the same thing as this one above. Just pull that down. And then chryseos, here's the genitive of chrysin, genitive, singular, feminine. Judgment. So one final comment before we take a look at this in its own context, and that is the word anastasis. Note that we have two parts in this. Ana, the preposition, which normally means up or on, something like that. Prepositions are weird in Greek. And then stasis, which is the noun form of... I'm going to get this wrong, aren't I? Histemi, the verb for stand. So anastasis is a standing up, hence the meaning of resurrection, and it is intended to refer to physical resurrection. So this then will point to Jesus, his comments about before Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was I am, and they lived to see his day. There are, well, the second one, they see the promise, they see the seed in themselves and in the subsequent generations, but they are not the dead, they are the living, because God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So physical resurrection is what he means here, physical resurrection for them likewise. And then you have Paul, who before the Roman centurion, when the Jews are trying to tear him apart, figures out the brilliant way of dividing his foes between the Pharisees and the Sadducees when he says, it is on a matter of the resurrection of the body, and that's not an exact quote, but it is on a matter of the resurrection that we are in disagreement. And the Sadducees, because they don't believe in the resurrection of the dead, and the Pharisees, because they do believe in the resurrection of the dead, start arguing with each other and are no longer arguing with Paul. But all that to say, physical resurrection of life, so the body is restored, the new body, of which Jesus is the prototype? Not really sure what word to use there, but the first. And then physical resurrection of judgment. Well, now let's take a look at it in its own context. For just as the Father has life in himself, thus also to the Son he gave life to have in himself. And he gave authority to him to do judgment, because he is Son of Man. Do not wonder at this thing, because hour comes in which all the in the graves will hear his voice. I'm going to add a 1 there in a minute. And the ones doing the good things will depart into resurrection of life, but the ones practicing the foul things into resurrection of judgment. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I hope taking a look at this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you have a very good... New Year's was last week. Epiphany. Yes, I hope you have a very good epiphany, or had a very good epiphany. I'm not sure what day in relation to when this video is publishing that happened. Anyway, Wale. That's Latin. Farewell.